Carbs for losing weight? What? Welcome to Chronic Health. I'm your host, Ryan Lovelace, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing how carbs are actually great for weight loss and not the enemy. They're not the devil, so don't avoid them. And I'm going to teach you the difference between the carbs you should avoid, carbs you should limit, and then the carbs you want plenty of. So carbs get a bad rep. Carbs get a reputation of making you gain weight, being the thing you should absolutely avoid. And if you were to ask a bunch of people, what do I need to do to lose weight? There's a good chance they would tell you, avoid carbs. That's not entirely true. So the reputation for carbs is, it's not entirely true, but it's also not entirely unearned. Carbs are sugar. That's just what they are. Carbs are sugar. However, sugar is the fuel for your body. The brain is the most energy demanding organ in the whole body. Half of all the glucose in your bloodstream, which glucose is sugar, half of all the glucose in your body that's circulating in your bloodstream goes to the brain. Your brain is vitally important that it gets the nutrients that you need and gets the nutrients it needs so that it can work properly. If there's one thing you don't want to make sure you have, not enough fuel on, it's for your brain. Your brain controls everything in your body. You want to make sure your brain is getting the fuel it needs. Imagine trying to use your car and saying, I'm not going to put fuel in it, the next month. And then as soon as it runs out of fuel, it shuts down. But you're like, no, I don't need fuel. I'll just keep going. Well, that's what it's like trying to stay away from carbs and still maintain a healthy lifestyle. Now, when I say carbs, and your first thought was, breads, pastas, fried foods, candy and real sugary foods. Yeah, those are the carbs that has earned carb its reputation of being, weight gaining and the things you should stay away from, which even if you're not trying to lose weight from a health standpoint, you should stay more away from, high sugary foods and beverages and fried foods because, they're just not good for you. They gum up the works. And if you're more tolerant to things like that, it can make you bloated, it can make you sick, it can have a myriad of other symptoms that it brings along with it. I'm not saying don't get rid of them. I'm just saying put them in their proper place and limit them. Don't make it the bulk of your meal. Make it, a small portion of your meal. And we'll go over portions of your plate here in a second. Why are carbs good for weight loss? Carbs are good for weight loss because, again, carbs are fuel. It's your body's fuel. It's the fuel your body desires, and the fuel your body wants is carb. Carb is sugar. Sugar is glucose. Glucose is what fuels the cells of your body to give them energy. And so carbs are fuel. And the best fuel you can get, the absolute best, is vegetables. Vegetables is not just because, mom always said you should eat them and you should eat plenty of them. It's because there's the carbs that are in vegetables are fibrous carbs. Now, fibrous carbs mean that those have a lot of fiber in them. So fiber, your body actually can't break down fiber. But what happens is because vegetables are full of fiber, your body basically just carries the carb that's in that fiber along, and it's what's called slow releasing carbohydrate, which means when you eat a bunch of fibrous carbs, a bunch of vegetables, even if you eat, several cups of them, the spike in insulin is going to be very minimal as opposed to something like, white bread or a lot of starchy carbs where the breakdown is very quick, very simple. Starchy carbs are what's called simple carbs. Simple carbs are your monosaccharides or disaccharides, and those just mean that they're already basically in the simplest form of sugar. Because they're in the simplest form of sugar, your body doesn't need to take much time or much effort to break them down and then use them. Fiber and fibrous foods are more complex carbs, which means it takes longer for your body to break them down, longer for your body to get the energy boost from those carbs because there's fiber in them, and your body doesn't break it down, so it basically gets the nutrients from that in a slower pace. Now, when I say carbs, and your first thought was like breads, pastas, crackers, those are like starchy carbs. Now, starchy carbs are the ones that give carb a bad rep. Those ones are called simple carbs. They're a bunch of either monosaccharides or disaccharides, meaning they're the simplest form of sugar that your body breaks it down to. And because it's simple carbs, it breaks it down so quick, the spike of insulin that you get, the rush of energy that you get from those types of foods is so high and so quick that insulin tries to give cells a bunch of energy, but it says, hey, I can't handle all this. Let's use some of this as fuel, and then let's store the rest as fat. Carbs are fuel. There's no way around that. Your body needs fuel, just like your car needs fuel, just like anything that relies on some type of fuel source. It needs that fuel to keep going, to be operating properly. Again, you don't want to deprive your body, or especially your brain, of the fuel that it requires and the fuel that it wants to run off of. So how should you break down your plate? And what's an easy way you can go about staying away from the bad carbs and only gravitating more towards the good carbs? If you don't want to learn, all the starchy carbs, all the fibrous carbs, all the bad carbs you should really be limiting, you can look at what's called the glycemic index. Just type into Google, look at the glycemic index, and then you'll notice that there's a bunch of foods on there. Each has a number value. The higher value the number, the higher your insulin will spike, the quicker that food will get, insulin to your body, you get energy to your cells. And so those are the ones that have a higher propensity for storing fat in your body. An easy rule of thumb is if the number value is 75 or higher, stay away from those, really limit those. The ones that are lower are going to have a lot more fiber in them. The breakdown is going to be slower. The release of carb and insulin into your bloodstream is going to be slower. And those are the ones that you're really going to want to eat as much of and learn how to add those into each and every meal that you eat. So if you take your plate, you divide your plate into 3 sections. Section 1 should be your protein. You should always have protein. Protein is one of the 3 macronutrients that your body needs. Protein is the very building blocks of just about everything in your body. Your eyes, your hair, your skin, your bones all need protein to build and to be strong. And if you're not getting the carb you need and you're still exercising, well, your body's saying, hey, we need that high quality fuel. We're not getting it from carb, so we're going to take protein, break it down into carb, into a usable form of glucose. And that process is called gluconeogenesis, where your body takes basically a non-carb source or a non-glucose source, breaks it down, reformats it into glucose so your body can use it the way it needs to. The second part of your plate should be starchy carbs. This is where you can have a little bit on there. If you like pasta, if you like rice, you can have some of that. Makes for a great side. Again, make sure that portion is the smallest portion of your plate. It's still good to have because it's very fueling and very nourishing for your body to have. It's just you really want to limit those starchy carbs. The third and biggest portion should be your fibrous carbs. So you got protein, starchy carbs, and fibrous carbs. Please don't avoid carbs. Carbs are what your body needs. However, avoid the foods made with white flour like breads and pastas. If you do get pasta, get whole grain pasta. That's the stuff you want. Stay away from like the white flour pasta. That's the stuff that really spikes your insulin. And again, higher insulin, higher fat storage. And so one final bonus tip is don't eat when you're hungry. You know how the old saying goes is don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry? It's the same thing with food, because when you're hungry, you want food right now. And so then when you're hungry, you're more apt to make poor decisions or eat more of what you don't need. Because think about last time you had like spaghetti. Your spaghetti was the plate, and then on the side, what'd you have? You probably had garlic bread. Now, number one, that is a great meal. Health-wise, not so much, but it's still great tasting. But when you're hungry, you make more decisions of, well, like bread's really good, so we'll get a lot of bread. And I love pasta, so man, pack it on. So don't just eat when you're hungry. If you want to know, more on when you should eat, how many meals you should eat, I actually have a video that I talk about how many meals you should eat a day, and the link will be in the description below. But don't eat just when you're hungry. Thank you so much for watching my video today. If you learned something new, or if I reminded you something you already knew, or you have any questions, leave all that down in the comments below. If you'd like to be notified right when my videos go up, make sure to hit that bell icon and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.